Pregnant after a one-night yacht affair in Dubai Part 2. Chapter 9, The Deal. Sophia didn't sleep that night. Not because she wasn't tired, she was exhausted, bone deep and soul heavy. But her mind wouldn't quiet. It spun like the ceiling fan above her bed, never stopping, never slowing. She lay awake staring at the crack in the plaster ceiling, the tests still tucked in the drawer of her nightstand, as if seeing them again would change the result. Her hand drifted instinctively to her stomach, flat and quiet for now, but not for long. What scared her more than the pregnancy itself was the knowledge that her life no longer belonged to just her. It now existed in orbit around someone else's gravitational pull, someone she barely knew but couldn't seem to escape. Rami Al-Fayed. His name alone echoed like a thunderclap every time she thought it. Billionaire. Heir. Enigma. A man who could summon her from her job with a gesture and offer her a contract like it was nothing more than a signature on a delivery slip. A man who, in one night, had slipped beneath her skin and rearranged everything. The next morning, she found an envelope taped to her apartment door. Cream-colored. Heavyweight. No return address. Inside, a single, folded letter on formal letterhead. We would like to arrange accommodations for your comfort and safety during the duration of your pregnancy. Please contact the number below at your earliest convenience. A car will be sent. Below the message, his name. Rami Al-Fayed. There was no threat. No demand. But the offer carried its own weight and the pressure of what would happen if she said no. Sophia stared at the paper, heart thudding. She didn't want to accept. Didn't want to feel like she was being kept. But she also knew what the alternative looked like: long hours on her feet, cheap health clinics, shared bathrooms, and the kind of stress that could break her. This wasn't just about pride anymore. It was about survival, hers and the baby's. 2 days later, she found herself standing in the grand entry of a villa tucked into a gated, seaside enclave just outside the city. White stone walls, flowering gardens, arched doorways. The kind of place only seen in Instagram posts and magazine spreads. The air smelled like jasmine and salt water. A woman in her 50s greeted her at the door, warm, composed, professionally pleasant. "I'm Lily," she said. "I'll be your live-in housekeeper and assistant. Mr. Al-Fayed asked that everything be to your taste. If it's not, it will be changed." Sophia blinked. "This is a lot." "It's temporary," Lily said, ushering her in. "Until you feel secure." The inside of the villa was a dream. Open floor plan. Soaring ceilings. Pale stone floors that stayed cool underfoot. A chef's kitchen, a reading nook, a bedroom that overlooked the sea. She could hear the waves breaking against the shore as she walked through, dazed. There were fresh white orchids on the nightstand. A wardrobe filled with new clothing. A stocked kitchen, every label pristine and foreign. Sophia ran her fingers along the marble edge of the kitchen island and let out a long, slow breath. This was the kind of place that softened people. That made the sharp edges of life go quiet. But it wasn't hers. She didn't trust it. That evening, Rami arrived. No security. No entourage. Just him, tailored suit, clean lines, the sharp scent of something custom and expensive. Sophia was on the balcony, watching the sea dissolve into night, when she heard the soft knock on the glass. She turned, tense. He nodded toward the sitting room. "Can we talk?" She followed him in, taking a seat on the edge of the velvet sofa while he poured them both sparkling water from the bar like it was a business meeting. It felt like one. Rami handed her a folder. "This is the agreement," he said. "It's been updated based on your feedback." She opened it. A structured, detailed contract. Legal language softened with generous terms. Full medical care. A monthly stipend more than she made in a year. Security detail. Travel flexibility. Personal driver and assistant, if needed. Confidentiality clause. At the bottom, a section titled Custody and Co-parenting Considerations. Sophia read it carefully. I see you removed the non-disclosure after birth clause, she said quietly. You're the mother of my child, he replied. I don't intend to silence you. She looked up, brows raised. But you do intend to control everything? I intend to protect what's mine. There it was again. That same possessive tone, not violent, not threatening. Just, final. As though the conversation had already been decided in his mind, and she was just now catching up. She closed the folder slowly. And what if I say no? He sat down across from her, fingers steepled, eyes sharp. Then you walk out of here and go back to your old life. But it won't be the same, Sophia. You'll be a pregnant woman in a city that doesn't forgive mistakes. And make no mistake, that child is mine. You'll never be anonymous again. Sophia's breath caught. He wasn't wrong, and that was the worst part. She'd already seen the headlines from the leaked photos. The whispers. The interest. If her pregnancy became public, it wouldn't just be a scandal. It would be news. And that child would grow up under the microscope of the world. With or without Rami. She folded her hands in her lap. This isn't about love, is it? He stared at her. No, he said simply. This is about responsibility. Dignity. Safety. I don't know what this is between us, Sophia. I won't pretend to. But I will make sure our child is born into stability. If you can't do it alone, let me help. Her chest tightened. Her instinct was to say no. To run. But for the first time in days, her heart wasn't just beating for herself. It was beating for someone else too. She took a breath. I'll consider it, she said. But I won't be bought. Rami's mouth curved. Not a smile, but something like respect. Good, he said. Then we're starting from honesty. Chapter 10, The Island Villa. For the first time in her life, Sophia woke up in luxury. No alarm. No traffic. No clattering of cheap dishes in the sink or Miriam's hairdryer roaring at 7 a.m. Just silence. Cool air. The distant sound of waves brushing against the shore. She blinked up at the soft fabric canopy above the bed, the faint scent of sea salt and jasmine floating in through the open balcony doors. The sheets beneath her were Egyptian cotton. The mattress, soft as clouds. The light that spilled across the white stone floors was golden, filtered through gauzy curtains swaying in the breeze. For a moment, she forgot. Forgot who she was. Forgot where she came from. Forgot why she was here. But then she sat up and her hand instinctively went to her stomach. Reality came back like a tide. She was pregnant. With Rami Al-Faid's child. Living in a private villa on an island just outside of Dubai. And her life no longer belonged to just her. The villa was breathtaking, no matter how much she tried to resent it. A private beach stretched just beyond the back terrace, white sand that led into turquoise shallows. Palm trees dotted the yard like they'd been positioned for a luxury magazine spread. Inside, the ceilings were high, the rooms spacious, and every surface looked like it had been kissed by a designer's hand. There were closets full of soft linen dresses, silk pajamas, and custom sandals all in her size. Fridges stocked with imported fruit, glowing bottles of mineral water, handwritten notes listing menu suggestions from the villa's chef. The kind of life that felt like a fantasy. But none of it felt real to Sophia. She walked barefoot across the marble floors, one hand resting on her stomach, and tried to feel something besides trapped. That afternoon, Lily, the housekeeper who somehow managed to be both warm and intimidating, insisted she take a walk on the beach. Fresh air is good, she said. So is sunlight. And isolation makes the mind stir with bad thoughts. Sophia snorted at that. My mind doesn't need help. It's been stirring on its own for weeks. Still, she obeyed. She slipped into a flowing cream sundress, wide-brimmed straw hat, oversized sunglasses, and wandered barefoot down the stone path toward the sea. The beach was silent except for the wind and water. No tourists. No crowds. No noise. Just her, the sand, and a future she still couldn't quite picture. She sat beneath a palm tree, toes digging into the soft, warm grains, and pulled out her phone. Still no messages from Miriam. She hadn't told her friend where she was. Not because she didn't trust her but because she wasn't ready to explain it all. How could she? How could she say, I slept with a stranger on a yacht and now I'm carrying his billionaire heir and living in a villa I didn't ask for? It sounded like something out of a fake book on a cheap Kindle. Only this was real. So real it made her skin prickle. That evening, Rami arrived. He didn't ring the bell. Didn't text. Just walked in through the back doors like the place was his. Which, technically, it was. Sophia was on the terrace, sipping a fruit smoothie and trying to read a book she couldn't concentrate on. She heard his footsteps behind her and didn't turn. You're early, she said flatly. He came to stand beside her, hands in his pockets, eyes on the horizon. I wanted to see how you're adjusting. She glanced at him, irritated by how good he looked again. Crisp white shirt, sleeves rolled, watch gleaming against his sun-kissed skin. No man should look that expensive in casual clothes. I'm adjusting, she replied. That sounds like code for miserable. She shrugged. Depends on your definition of miserable. I have everything I need. Beautiful view, endless food, a wardrobe that makes me feel like I fell into a rich woman's Instagram feed. But, he prompted. She finally turned to face him. But I don't have a life here, Rami. I don't know anyone. I can't work. I can't go anywhere without being escorted. It's not a home. It's a cage with designer curtains. His face shifted, a flicker of something almost like guilt crossed his features, but it vanished just as fast. I never meant to trap you, he said. She laughed softly. That's the thing about traps. They rarely look like cages at first. They stood in silence, the waves murmuring beneath them. Then he asked, quietly, Are you feeling well? The baby. Her hand instinctively drifted to her stomach again. So far, no complications. Morning sickness is manageable. That's good. Sophia sighed. Why are you really here, Rami? He looked at her, really looked this time. His gaze steady. Focused. Because whether you accept it or not, this is my child too. And I want to be part of the process. I want to be involved. Her eyes narrowed. What does that mean? It means I want to attend doctor appointments. I want to know if it's a boy or girl. I want to hear the heartbeat. Sophia blinked, momentarily disarmed by the sincerity in his voice. You want to be a father, she said, testing the words. He didn't hesitate. Yes. And not just a provider? I've been a provider my whole life. I know how to give money. But I've never had something real to protect. The way he said it, quiet, almost vulnerable, made something deep inside her wobble. She didn't trust him. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But she believed that part of him. The part that didn't need to say much because his silence said everything. Later that night, alone in bed, Sophia lay beneath the silk sheets and stared at the ceiling. The villa no longer felt like a hotel. But it didn't feel like home, either. It felt like a transition, a space between the life she had and the life she didn't yet understand. But one thing was clear now. This was no longer temporary. The baby, the villa, Rami, this strange new world of wealth and expectations, it was all real. And it was only going to get more complicated from here. Chapter 11, The Gala. Sophia had never worn a dress like this before. It was soft, silver, and sinfully expensive. The silk clung to her body in all the right places, a sculpted silhouette that whispered elegance but shimmered like a scandal. The neckline plunged just enough to be provocative, but the cut was so expertly tailored that she looked like she belonged on the cover of a fashion magazine. She didn't feel like herself. She felt like a version of herself she'd only ever imagined in fleeting dreams, confident, composed, dangerous in heels. And that terrified her. The invitation had come 3 days earlier. An envelope on her bedside table, delivered by Lily in the morning with tea and sliced fruit. The Al-Fayed Foundation Annual Charity Gala. Attire, black tie. Location, Emirates Palace Hotel. Escort, Mr. Rami Al-Fayed. Beneath that, a handwritten note. You may not want to be seen. But the world already sees you. Let them see you properly. R. Sophia had stared at the card for 20 minutes before finally shoving it into the drawer. But it burned in the back of her mind all day. And when Lily began arranging dress options without asking, she didn't protest. Because a small, traitorous part of her wanted to know. What would it feel like to stand beside him in public? Not as a mistake. Not as a secret. But as someone who mattered. The night of the gala, the villa buzzed with quiet chaos. A makeup artist and hairstylist swept in like a glamorous hurricane. Sophia sat in front of a mirror she didn't recognize, letting strangers transform her face into something so radiant, she barely recognized it herself. Her hair was pulled into soft waves that framed her face. Her eyes were smoky, her lips a soft, romantic rose. Her skin glowed like gold dust. And when she finally stepped into the dress, silver, floor-length, backless, even Lily paused. You look, Lily said slowly, eyes sweeping up and down, like someone very expensive should be nervous. Sophia smirked, but inside, she was trembling. Rami arrived at exactly 8 p.m. When Sophia descended the stairs, he looked up from his phone and went still. His eyes swept over her, slowly. Thoroughly. His usual controlled expression faltered, just for a second, replaced by something so raw it made her heart race. You clean up well, she said, because silence felt too dangerous. He gave her a look that said a lot and nothing all at once. So do you. His tuxedo was immaculate. Simple, classic, tailored within an inch of his life. He smelled like cedarwood and something darker, masculine, and magnetic. Together, they looked like something out of a scandalous romance spread in Vanity Fair. But the tension between them, that was entirely real. The gala was held in the grand ballroom of the Emirates Palace Hotel, all gold ceilings, marble columns, and crystal chandeliers that could have bankrupted a small country. Photographers hovered at the red carpet entrance. Sophia hesitated when she saw them. Rami offered his arm. You don't have to speak. Just smile. Once. She exhaled, placed her hand gently on his sleeve, and stepped forward. Flash bulbs exploded. The crowd leaned in. And just like that, the first public photo of Rami Al-Fayed with a woman he wasn't denying was born. Inside, the ballroom shimmered. Everyone looked important. Everyone smelled expensive. Everyone watched them. Sophia felt their eyes, women in couture, men in handmade suits, whispers behind manicured hands. But she also felt Rami beside her. Unmoving. Steady. He introduced her as Sophia. No last name. No explanation. No apology. He didn't flinch when someone asked who she was. He didn't stutter. And when a distant relative of his offered her a too sweet smile and a passive-aggressive comment about new friends, Rami didn't blink. "She's with me," he said simply. And just like that, the tone changed. Sophia wasn't invisible anymore. Later in the evening, they found themselves tucked in a quiet corner, champagne glasses in hand, watching the ballroom spin with laughter and lies. "I still don't know why I'm here," she said softly. "You're here," he replied, eyes on her, "because it's time." "For what?" "For the world to realize I make my own choices." She tilted her head. "Is that what I am?" "A statement." He stepped closer, his voice dropping. "You're the mother of my child. You're not a statement, Sophia. You're a consequence I don't regret." Her breath hitched. It wasn't poetry. It wasn't even gentle. But it was honest. And for reasons she didn't understand, that meant more. Just after midnight, as the crowd thinned and the jazz band began its final set, Sophia stood beside him in the gilded elevator, heart pounding. The silence was thick. Heavy. Electric. She didn't know who moved first. Maybe it was him. Maybe it was her. But one second she was standing beside him and the next, his mouth was on hers. It wasn't sweet. It wasn't soft. It was everything they'd been trying not to feel for weeks: need, resentment, chemistry, fire. His hands were on her back, hers tangled in his jacket, lips crashing together like they'd been starving for this exact kind of mistake. When the elevator doors opened on the penthouse floor, they didn't speak. He took her hand, led her inside. And once again, she let herself fall into the arms of the man who had ruined everything, and made her want more anyway. Chapter 12, The Tabloid Leak. The morning after the gala was deceptively peaceful. Sunlight poured into the villa in soft gold rays, glinting off the glass windows and casting warm shadows across the marble floors. The sea outside was calm, waves lapping lazily against the private beach. Birds chirped. Wind rustled through palm fronds. It was, by all appearances, a perfect morning. But the air inside Sophia's room felt heavier. She sat on the edge of the bed wrapped in a satin robe, bare feet curled against the cool floor. Her lips still tingled from Rami's kiss. Her body still remembered the way he'd held her the night before, slow and desperate, like he was trying to memorize her. She hadn't stayed the night in the penthouse suite. When the haze of their kiss faded and the door to reality creaked open again, she'd pulled away, breathless and shaken, whispering, "I can't." He hadn't argued. He'd nodded, silent, his jaw tight with restraint, and had her escorted back to the villa in a car that drove too smoothly for how much her mind was racing. Now, in the pale hush of morning, it all felt unreal. A dream stitched together with silver thread and red velvet. Until her phone buzzed. And then buzzed again. And again. And again. Dozens of notifications. Twitter. Instagram. WhatsApp. Unknown numbers. She frowned, picked it up and froze. Her screen was filled with one photo. Again and again, from every account, every angle. Her and Rami. In the elevator. Kissing. It wasn't grainy or distorted. It was clear. Crystal clear. The lighting from the elevator captured them perfectly: her hand on his chest, his hand on her back, their lips locked like no one else existed. And the caption beneath it? Mystery woman identified, Rami Al-Fade's new flame? Is this the woman carrying the Al-Fade air? Social climber or secret bride? Her stomach dropped. Nausea clawed at her throat, violent and immediate. Her phone buzzed again, a message from Miriam. "What the hell, Sophia? You're in Vogue Arabia's gossip column?" Sophia threw the phone onto the bed like it had burned her. She stood up, pacing, heart pounding in her chest like a drum of doom. She'd barely had time to process the pregnancy. She hadn't told anyone. And now, the entire world knew. Or thought they knew. By the time Lily appeared, holding an iPad with a neutral expression, Sophia already knew. "You've seen it?" Lily asked quietly. Sophia nodded. "Is it everywhere?" "Everywhere that matters." Sophia took the iPad. Dozens of headlines. Celebrity accounts posting mystery girl reveal videos. TikToks breaking down her dress, her hair, her eyebrow shape. People dissecting her every expression in a 5-second paparazzi video from the gala entrance. A side-by-side photo of her in the silver gown and a blurry shot of her leaving the yacht weeks ago barefoot in Rami's robe. They had found her. Sophia's vision blurred. Her knees buckled, and she sank into a nearby chair. "It's out. It's all out," she whispered. "I didn't even tell my family yet. I didn't even." Lily placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You need to stay calm, Habibti. Stress is not good right now." Sophia laughed harsh and hollow. "Calm? The internet thinks I'm a gold-digging mistress who trapped a billionaire with a pregnancy. They're calling me a discount Kardashian?" Lily didn't flinch. "You're going to be fine. You're stronger than you think." Sophia buried her face in her hands. "I didn't want any of this." An hour later, Rami appeared at the villa unannounced but not unexpected. He didn't speak when Lily opened the door. He walked straight to Sophia, who was still in the living room, clutching the tablet like it might bite her. His jaw was tight, his tie undone, phone still in hand. "I'm handling it," he said immediately. "Oh, are you?" she snapped, standing up. "Because I'm getting death threats in my DMs and my cousin in Manila just found out I'm pregnant through a BuzzFeed Middle East article?" "I've already called my team," he said. "We're issuing a press statement." "Let me guess, I'm a longtime friend? A distant cousin? A nameless distraction?" He looked at her, really looked, and something in his expression softened. "No," he said. "You're the woman I kissed in front of a camera I didn't see. And I'm not going to pretend it didn't happen." She faltered. He stepped closer. "I can't stop the press from spinning it. But I can control the narrative." "And what's that?" she asked. "That we're working through things privately. That we're expecting a child. That I care." Her breath caught. "You care?" she asked, barely above a whisper. His voice was low. Steady. "I do." For a long moment, neither of them moved. The silence between them was no longer cold, it was full of heat, confusion, tangled truth. But Sophia couldn't afford to let it break her open. Not again. She stepped back. "Then help me disappear again," she said. "Because I can't breathe with the world watching me like this." Rami nodded. "Pack a bag. We're leaving tonight." That night, the villa lights were turned off. Sophia left through the back exit in a black hoodie and sunglasses, clutching a small duffel bag. No press. No photographers. Just a private car and Rami by her side, silent as the city blurred behind them. The headlines followed them. But for now, they were gone. Chapter 13, The Mother. The plane touched down just after midnight. Sophia hadn't known where they were going until the final descent. No boarding passes, no public terminals, just a sleek black car that drove them onto the tarmac, a private jet already waiting, the crew calling Rami sir and her ma'am. Now, as the Gulfstream taxied to a smooth halt under a blanket of stars, she looked out the window and blinked. Marbella. Southern Spain. She hadn't expected that. "Your villa?" she asked, trying to mask her nerves. Rami shook his head. "My mother's." Sophia's stomach tightened. "So, this is a trap?" He turned to face her fully, the plane cabin dim and quiet. "No. But she knows. About the baby. About the photos. About you." Sophia swallowed. And she invited me. Invited is generous, he said. She insisted. The Alfade estate in Marbella was not a house, it was a legacy carved into stone and drenched in jasmine. Whitewashed walls, intricate wrought iron balconies, climbing bougainvillea, fountains carved from onyx and alabaster. Every detail whispered wealth. Old wealth. The kind that didn't scream, it stared. As the gates opened and the car slipped down the long driveway, Sophia's hands curled tightly in her lap. She'd faced hostile customers, bad bosses, and internet trolls, but this was different. This wasn't just judgment. This was dynastic inspection. Rami's mother was waiting on the veranda when they arrived. Tall. Immaculate. Her salt and pepper hair swept into a sculpted chignon, her dress a muted shade of pearl silk that clung elegantly to her statuesque figure. She wore no visible jewelry, she didn't need to. Her presence alone sparkled like a crown. Sophia had seen powerful women before, but never one like this. Sophia, she said, before either of them spoke. Welcome. Her English was crisp, her accent refined and educated, tinged with something ancient and regal. Sophia stepped forward, heart thundering. Mrs. Alfade, thank you for... Call me Noura, she said, voice smooth. We don't need formalities. Not with family. The word hit like a sharp note beneath a pretty song. Family. Sophia nodded, but Rami watched his mother with a tightness in his jaw that Sophia hadn't seen before. The businessman, the billionaire, the commanding presence, all of it dimmed in her presence. He wasn't just Rami here. He was her son. And sons didn't dictate terms in this house. They sat for tea in the garden, delicate silver trays, handmade porcelain, pastries arranged with surgical precision. Sophia took a sip and tried not to sweat through her linen dress. Noura watched her the way one might observe a rare, potentially venomous butterfly. So, Noura said at last, gently placing her teacup down, you're the woman the internet can't stop talking about? Sophia smiled, tightly. Not by choice. No, Noura said, tone perfectly neutral. Scandal rarely is a choice. Rami shifted beside her. Mother. But Noura lifted one hand. Graceful. Unbothered. I'm not here to shame anyone, she said. The past is the past. What matters now is how we move forward. Public perception must be carefully sculpted. And so must the future of this child. Sophia straightened. I don't need sculpting. Noura gave a small, elegant smile. Of course you do, darling. Everyone does, when they enter a family like this. It wasn't cruel. It wasn't even condescending. It was just, true. From her perspective. Sophia set her teacup down. Let me be very clear, I'm not here to climb a social ladder. I didn't plan any of this. But I won't be hidden. And I won't be treated like a guest in my own life. Noura tilted her head, studying her. You have spirit. That will help, if you're clever enough to use it well. A quiet beat passed between them. Then Noura nodded once and stood. You'll rest in the east wing. I've had a room prepared. The doctor will come tomorrow. And you'll join us for dinner at 8. It's formal. Sophia blinked. Dinner. Rami smirked, barely. She means a diplomatic firing squad with dessert. Noura didn't smile. We'll be welcoming a few family members. Some of whom are understandably curious about the woman carrying my grandchild. Before Sophia could respond, Noura turned and glided down the veranda steps like a queen descending into a political war. Later, alone in the guest suite, Sophia sat at the edge of a bed carved from ancient walnut and upholstered in silk, staring out the window. The sea sparkled under the morning sun. But she felt anything but calm. Rami came to the doorway, hands in his pockets. You okay? She terrifies me, Sophia whispered. Like, she could end me with a smile? She could, he said. But she won't. Not if you keep showing her that. That. Your spine, he said. She respects people who don't bend too easily. Sophia exhaled, rubbing her stomach. Great. I'll just try not to vomit at dinner, then. Rami stepped inside, quieter now. She doesn't hate you, he said. Sophia raised an eyebrow. Could have fooled me. She just needed to see you. Sophia turned to him. And what did she see? He looked at her soft, unreadable. Someone who didn't flinch. Chapter 14, Dinner with Wolves. The table was long enough to land a helicopter on. It glittered with polished crystal, gold-rimmed plates, and centerpieces made of fresh-cut roses in shades of ivory and blood red. Dozens of candles flickered between wine bottles and porcelain bowls, casting soft, deceptive shadows across a battlefield disguised as a dining room. Sophia stood at the doorway of the Al-Fayed Estate's formal dining hall, wearing a deep sapphire gown that had appeared in her wardrobe earlier that afternoon, along with a velvet box containing antique diamond earrings. Wear these tonight. N. The message had no greeting. No warmth. Just instruction. She wore the gown. And the earrings. And the armor of a woman walking straight into the lion's den. Rami stood beside her in a sleek tuxedo, calm and unreadable as always. You don't have to say much tonight, he said under his breath. Just smile. And breathe. I'll try to remember how, she whispered. They stepped into the room together. 10 heads turned. 10 pairs of eyes, most of them dark, calculating, amused, landed on her all at once. Rami's extended family filled the table, uncles in tailored suits, aunts in couture, cousins who looked like they belonged in perfume ads. Each of them impeccably dressed, impossibly poised, and unquestionably wealthy. And seated at the head of the table, Noura Al-Fayed, radiant in black velvet and sapphires, like a monarch on her throne. She stood to greet them. Welcome. Sophia smiled tightly. Thank you for having me. The seating was already arranged. Sophia was placed to Rami's right. To her own right sat Salma, Rami's cousin, a sleek woman with cheekbones like blades and eyes that gleamed with barely masked contempt. As soon as Sophia sat down, Salma leaned closer and whispered, You're braver than I thought. Or just hungrier. Sophia blinked, forced a gracious smile. Why not both? Salma raised her eyebrows, surprised and maybe slightly amused. Round 1, survived. The first course arrived, scallops in saffron butter with a hint of citrus foam. Everything was beautiful. Impossibly perfect. But Sophia's stomach twisted with nerves, and she could barely touch it. Across the table, a man who looked like a villain from a Bond movie, Rami's Uncle Omar, addressed her suddenly. So, Sophia, he said, swirling his wine with a lazy hand. Where is your family from? Originally from the Philippines, she said with practiced calm. I was raised mostly between Manila and Spain. He hummed. Interesting. And now? Dubai. Until recently, she nodded. He smiled. You've covered quite a lot of ground in a short time. Rami's hand tensed on the table beside her. Sophia smiled sweetly. I suppose the same could be said of the Al-Fayed family. You've built quite the empire in very little time, haven't you? A beat of silence. Aunt Layla chuckled softly. She's clever, Rami. She's bold, Noura corrected. There's a difference. Sophia looked directly at her. Would you prefer I were quiet? Noura studied her, long and slow. No, she said. Quiet women are easily dismissed. I don't raise sons to marry shadows. Marry. The word dropped like a diamond into the center of the table. Sophia nearly choked on her sparkling water. Rami coughed beside her. Cousin Salma smirked. Jumping ahead a little, aren't we, Auntie? Noura didn't blink. Am I? Sophia's pulse spiked. She gripped the edge of her chair. I think we're getting ahead of ourselves, Rami said evenly. Sophia and I are still figuring things out. Are you? Omar asked, swirling his glass. Because from what we saw in the papers, you two seem very figured out. A round of polite, sharp laughter swept the table. Sophia wanted to crawl under it, but instead, she straightened her spine and met Omar's gaze. Everything in the papers is exaggerated. You should know that better than anyone. Noura's smile was almost imperceptible. Point for the girl in the sapphire dress. By the time dessert arrived, a delicate rosewater panna cotta with gold leaf and pistachios, Sophia felt like she'd been through 12 rounds in a social boxing ring. They'd asked about her education, her work history, her intentions, her values. Some questions were veiled. Some weren't. But through it all, she held her ground. Until Noura's final play. I would like Sophia to remain here in Marbella for the remainder of her pregnancy, she said, as if it were already decided. Sophia's fork froze mid-air. Rami sat up straighter. That's not your decision to make. I'm not making a decision, Noura said lightly. I'm offering sanctuary, peace, and distance from unflattering attention. Sophia turned toward her. What about what I want? Noura met her gaze directly. What do you want, Sophia? Everyone fell silent. Sophia looked around the room, every set of eyes on her, every judgment simmering beneath gold candlesticks and polished silver. Then she looked at Rami. His expression unreadable. Watching her. Waiting. I want to raise my child without being told who I'm supposed to become, she said. And I want to decide for myself where I belong. Noura didn't move. But her eyes shifted. Not softened, but sharpened. As if Sophia had passed some invisible test she hadn't realized she was taking. Then you may stay, Noura said simply. As my guest. Until you decide otherwise. Rami blinked. Wait, so, now it's her decision? Noura stood, smoothing her down. It always was. And just like that, dinner was over. Later that night, alone in the guest suite, Sophia stood barefoot on the cool tiled balcony, watching the Mediterranean shimmer under a silver moon. She didn't feel like she'd won anything. But she hadn't lost herself either. And that, for now, was enough. Chapter 15, The Past Affair. The wind picked up along the balcony, pulling at the folds of Sophia's robe like ghost fingers. Rami stood beside her, close but not touching. His presence was steady, his scent familiar, now clean linen and cedar, tinged with something darker she couldn't name. Sophia's arms were crossed, her hand protectively curved over the slight swell of her belly. The baby was still no more than a secret flutter inside her, but the weight of it was changing everything. Her body. Her future. Her relationship with the man standing just inches away. You didn't like the idea of me being alone, she repeated quietly, but that's not the whole story, is it? Rami's jaw tightened. He exhaled slowly, then nodded. No, he admitted. It's not. She turned toward him, watching his profile, all chiseled lines and shadows, lit only by the flicker of candlelight from inside the suite. I heard something tonight, she said. At dinner. One of your cousins, Salma, I think, mentioned someone. He's always had a type. She looked right at me when she said it. He didn't respond. Sophia narrowed her eyes. Rami, who was she? For a long moment, he was still. Then, finally, he spoke. Her name was Layla Al-Zarauni. The name landed between them like a stone dropped into still water, creating ripples Sophia hadn't yet begun to feel. I was engaged to her, he said. A long time ago. Years before you. Sophia blinked, the breath catching in her chest. He'd said it so plainly, so deliberately. Not shameful but not casual, either. You were engaged, she asked, stunned. He nodded once. It was a high society match. One of those things everyone expected. Layla was smart. Gorgeous. She came from old Emirati money. A perfect fit, on paper. Sophia moved slowly to the railing, gripping the edge. So what happened? He hesitated. Then, she disappeared. Sophia turned, eyebrows lifting. Disappeared as in, ghosted you? No, he said, voice lower now. Disappeared from everything. From Dubai. From society. From the entire region. Silence pulsed between them, thick with the weight of that confession. One day, she was at a gala on my arm. The next, she was on a plane to Geneva. She called off the engagement with a 2-sentence email. No warning. No reason. Sophia stared at him. You never saw her again? He shook his head once. Never. And she never explained? No. But the media, they speculated enough for both of us. What kind of rumors? She asked quietly, afraid of the answer. He turned his gaze to the ocean, jaw flexing. Some said she was pregnant and didn't want the scandal. Others said I drove her away. That I cheated. That I had her handled to protect the Al-Fayed name. That my mother forced her out. Every few months, someone claims to have seen her in Paris, in Marrakesh, in Buenos Aires, but it's always smoke. No fire. Sophia swallowed. So no one really knows? No, he said, glancing at her. No one does. And now, she whispered, you're with me. Pregnant. In secret. And it's all happening again. He didn't answer. He didn't have to. Because the air between them was suddenly thick with something Sophia hadn't felt before, not just fear, but dread. The sharp, electric feeling of stepping into someone else's unfinished story. She took a step back, instinctively retreating. Why didn't you tell me? Because I didn't want to scare you. You should have told me before I got dragged into a headline. You weren't supposed to become part of this world, he said. That night on the yacht, it wasn't planned. Nothing about this has been planned, she snapped. And now I find out I'm not the first mysterious woman to disappear from your life? Do you know how that sounds? Rami stepped toward her, his voice low and sharp. You're not her, Sophia. Don't I know it? You're stronger than she was. And what if I wasn't? She asked, voice shaking. Would I be the next rumor? The next disappearance in the Al-Fayed legacy? Something in his eyes flashed then, not anger, not cruelty, but hurt. I didn't choose that ending, he said quietly. And I won't let it happen again. Sophia pressed a hand against her temple. It's not just about you, Rami. I'm the one carrying this child. I'm the one being Googled. Threatened. Measured. And now I'm supposed to trust a man with a vanishing fiancé in his past. He exhaled, stepped closer, and this time, he looked exhausted. Not powerful. Not untouchable. Just tired. I've made mistakes, he said. Layla was one of them. Not because she left, but because I never saw it coming. I thought having the right name was enough. I thought doing everything correctly meant it would all work. It didn't. She left. And for a long time, I let that make me cold. Careful. Calculated. He looked up at her, voice softening. But I'm not making those mistakes with you. Sophia stared at him, her heart pounding. She wanted to believe him. But belief wasn't easy when the ghosts of the past were still seated at the table. She turned back toward the sea. "I'm not Layla," she said, voice calm now. "No," he said. "You're not. But I need you to remember something, Rami." He waited. "I didn't disappear," she whispered. "You did. The night after the yacht. You vanished, and I had to carry the weight alone." He nodded once. Slowly. Regretfully. And for the first time since their reunion, he didn't try to explain it away. "I'm sorry," he said. The words hung there small, quiet, but real. She didn't say anything else. Just turned back toward the water, her hand on her belly. He stood beside her again, this time in silence. And though nothing had truly changed between them, something had cracked open. Something necessary. Something real.
Thanks for listening to Billionaire Romance Stories, where love meets luxury in the most unexpected places. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like, subscribe, and drop a comment. We love hearing your favorite twists and wild theories. And don't forget to ring that bell, because in this world of yachts, secrets, and steamy romance, the next story is always one scandal away.